Good evening and welcome to the St. Pete by Night Twitch channel where we play St. Petersburg by Night, a massive multiplayer 5th edition World of Darkness chronicle set in the city of St. Petersburg, Florida. My name is Kent, also known as Misha Kent on all social media. I am the lead storyteller of St. Pete by Night, but tonight I get to play host because it is Saturday night, and that means it's time for After Dark. After Dark is our behind the scenes special where we talk to players, storytellers, we talk about storyteller tips, game playing tips, we teach about the rules, but we also get to talk to some movers and shakers out there in the grandiose world of darkness. And tonight we happen to have, in my opinion, one of those movers and shakers joining us. Of course, we are talking to DM Disaster, a professional storyteller over on StartPlaying.games. You can find them at startplaying.games/GM/rolls after dark. And not only are they a professional storyteller, but they're a streamer. They wear so many hats. So let's go ahead and take an opportunity to allow them to introduce themselves. Disaster, take it away.
Hi, so I am DM Disaster or just Disaster. I am a storyteller slash game master, dungeon master, however you want to phrase it. I have been storytelling, DMing for professionally about 5 years. And yeah, I'm just excited to be here. Thanks for having me.
Oh, it's my pleasure to have you. In fact, I love talking to people who've been around for a while, especially doing this professionally, because I think it's such a brave act to decide to become a professional DM or storyteller. Like, it's such a leap to take because when I grew up, when I started TTRPGing and everything like that, it was an unheard of concept. You know, it was one of those things that people kept as like a guilty pleasure or a shameful secret. And I'm so glad, especially since the pandemic, but even before that, we've seen it become much more accessible, much more relatable, much cooler, to be completely honest. And the fact that people can make a living as storytellers or DMs is an incredible opportunity that just was, like I said, unheard of before now. But before we get into all that, I'd really love to start at the beginning of your journey, way back when. When did you first discover TTRPGs as a whole, and did you have any kind of preconceived notions about it? Like, what got you interested in actually trying it out and getting involved with it?
Actually, I learned about it when I was 11 years old.
Okay.
Uh, so 20 some odd years now. And my brother actually is the one who introduced me to tabletop games. In our small little town that we lived in, there was only one game shop, and the owner needed a mural painted on his wall. And my brother was an artist, and so they commissioned him to paint this entire like D&D dragon scene on the wall. And as payment, they gave him D&D 3.5, the monster manual, everything, and dice as a gift. And he's not into that. So he was like, here, this is for you. And that's basically how I got it.
So you basically got to piggyback your way into TTRPGs because of your
Yep.
brother being an artist. That's such a cool opportunity, and what a lucky opportunity too, to be just kind of given a full starter kit of like, here you go, here's everything you need to get into the game. 3.5 and Dungeons and Dragons being an entry point, I think was an entry point for a lot of people, either 3 or
Yes.
3.5, until recently when 5e became a lot of people's entry point.
Yeah.
But 3.5 is a rather complicated rule set to learn at 11 years old. What
It
made
is.
you, or at least incentivized you, to keep digging into it and keep learning more?
I am a person who just doesn't like to quit. So I didn't understand anything, and my brother just started taking me to the games at the game shop, and the owners would teach me, the rules and everything like that. So I've just basically been doing that ever since then, learning every edition before and then obviously after.
Well, and you've grown to such an impressive lexicon of games that you've learned. And even on your page, you say you're willing to learn even more games and you're kind of open to learning. So it seems like TTRPG has become like a craft and a study for you beyond just running D&D or running World of Darkness. Like, you are really deep in it and rooted
Hmm.
in learning anything and everything you can, and that's so admirable. So what do you remember about your first game? the first game you ever played in. We'll start with played and then we'll talk about running because that's a whole different bag of worms there. But
Yeah.
the first game you ever played in, what did you play? Class, everything like that. And what was that experience like for you?
I played a generic elf ranger.
Okay.
Um, Obviously, Lord of the Rings was not a thing back then, but this seemed the most human-like without being human. Um, I played that, and the experience I would say was painful.
Okay.
I was not familiar with the rules myself. Just having read it 11 years old, I can't really comprehend much. And then they just kind of threw me into an adventures league and was like, here you go. This is how
Mm.
you learn, and good luck.
We're throwing you in the pool. Go
That's
for
it.
it. Well, and D&D especially is a very crunchy
Hmm.
mechanics based game. So if you don't have at least a familiarity with the mechanics, it can be very easy to get overwhelmed or get lost in it all, especially if you're playing in something like an adventures league where there's lots of other people there who probably know the rules fairly well and they're not necessarily going to be patient and work with you. Who would you say was your biggest influence in TTRPGs? Now, whether it's somebody you discovered not that long ago or somebody who you worked with even in the store back in those days, like who had the biggest impact on you and took you in or taught you?
Um, Aside from the store owner, which honestly I can't even remember his name. Aside from him, I'd say as of recent, Matt Colville.
Okay, okay, that's a really good go too. As somebody
Yeah.
who's been a big important part of that whole thing, and has a very strong familiarity with how things work. That's a really good influence to have. When did you decide to make the transition from player to DM or storyteller? When did you decide to take that leap into telling stories of your own?
Basically when I was 11.
Oh, really? So right
I
away.
Yeah. I am not a good player.
Okay, I get that.
um, I very much enjoy playing, but I am a person that I'm not a rules lawyer, but in my head, I'm like, no, this isn't how it's supposed to be done. And I just kind of start to lose interest in games as a player. And so I'm like, well, I could have done this way and make it better. And so I just kind of decided, well, you know what? I don't like playing. I like watching other people play. It brings me more joy to actually have other people play than for me to play. So I just said, you know what? To hell with it. I'm just going to be a player full time or a DM full time.
And what was your first game like? Did you get some friends together or were you running for people at the store that you were talking about? Like how did you actually make the like how did you get your first group together?
I actually had some friends from high school or high school, middle school. I had some friends from middle school. The nerds, the ones who just kind of didn't fit in with everybody. We all just kind of got together, and during lunchtime, we would just play. Um, and then one of my friends, her father, he used to play, and so we would go to his place, and so he was like our GM.
So you did kind of have some influences there as well if you had somebody who was running for you and was willing to like be a part of that because I know one of the biggest things that I think keeps people from getting into DMing or storytelling or running games is that kind of apprehension and that fear of like this is my first time doing it and that
Mhm.
a little bit of stage fright or a little bit of panic sets in. Did you experience anything like that through that process or did you have a really good group to get your feet wet in the pool, so to speak, and to really like start experimenting with it?
I am a fake it till you make it kind of person.
Okay. Confidence is a good thing. It's a good trait to have.
So I know that the actual first, I would say, game that I had would probably be about 6 years ago, 5 or 6 years ago now. And I just got my husband and a couple of our friends, and I was like, we're going to sit here and we're going to play for 16 hours and we're going to get this. And we sat for 16 hours straight and we played through a game. And yeah, ever since then, I was like, yeah, I think I want to do this like full time, like forever.
Well, and to the point to make it a professional thing. So shortly after that, you decided to go into it professionally. What was that process like? What was it like working with Start Playing Games and everything to get into that? And what made you choose to go down that route?
I have tried to go the solo route, obviously reaching out, going into different servers and things like that, basically cold calls. And I know a lot of people hate cold calls, so it was kind of a iffy situation. And then Start Playing showed up and they were like, hey, you want to run professionally? We have the place for you. And I was like, I mean, if it's not pricey on our end as the GM, to obviously pay out to be able to utilize their services. And this is guaranteed that people are willing to play or pay to play instead of basically trying to comb through the sea of no, I don't want to.
Well, and they take care of a lot of the kind of back end work of setting up payment systems and getting involved with advertising and listings and
Yeah.
scheduling software and all that stuff. It seems like they have all that taken care of for you. So
Mhm.
it's really just a matter of putting in your end of things and then just showing up and playing the game. And based off of your page, you've got all 5-star reviews. You've got very, very happy group of players who've worked with you, and you have so many opportunities available to people who are interested in things like D&D or World of Darkness. And speaking of World of Darkness, when did that come across your radar? When did you first discover Vampire the Masquerade, all of these games, this whole different system? Because D&D is obviously the mainstay, the flagship of TTRPGs. And it makes sense that everyone discovers it at one point in their life. But World of Darkness, after the 90s, kind of fell below the radar, and even until recently, fifth edition was kind of a solo game that was floating out there on its own. How did you discover it, and what made you decide to pursue that?
I actually discovered it on TikTok.
Okay.
I never heard of it before, and I know it's going to sound crazy. I didn't know that the Xbox 360 Hunter the Reckoning game was World of Darkness. So I had played the game, was very interested in that, and I was like, man, I wish they had a tabletop game for this. And lo and behold, you know, decades later, I ended up finding out that yes, they do have one.
Well, and it's changed quite dramatically from back in those days. The old hunter system versus the current hunter system are two completely different animals. But yeah, I think that a lot of people find interesting ways to approach the world of darkness or discover it. And I think video games are a big one. I know that Bloodlines was one of the best TTRPG or RPG video games in my mind ever made. And now with Blood Hunt out, a lot of people are finding it through that way, versus discovering it the old fashioned TTRPG way. What about the World of Darkness system spoke to you? What made you want to learn it, to the point that you're even running it and now teaching it to people as well? What about the system did you like that made you stick around with it?
The storytelling aspect, it's completely different to D&D and Pathfinder and things like that, where I feel like with World of Darkness system, it's more of a collaborative game rather than in D&D, it's more of a I tell the story and you just hit things.
Right. I also find in D&D there's a lot more of a DM versus the players mentality. It's
Mhm.
obviously you represent all the monsters, you represent all the
Yeah.
traps and dungeon and everything. So it can be almost kind of an adversarial relationship in a D&D story, whereas in Vampire or Hunter or Werewolf, it is a lot more collaborative. The players have a lot more power over the overall story and adventure as it is, um, than in any other game that I've experienced so far. What are some other systems that you've grown familiar with or brought into your lexicon, aside from D&D and World of Darkness games?
Uh, what is it? Fallout, the new Fallout RPG that just came out, and The Walking Dead. Uh, Currently learning Call of Cthulhu and Cult Divinity, Twilight 2000.
So that's quite a list,
Yeah,
to say the least.
it's
And
always growing.
Well, and it's an expanding list of genres as well. So it doesn't seem like you're primarily focused on horror or fantasy, but you've got like futuristic, you've got more noir, you've got a whole kind of variety of styles. Is there a style that appeals to you more than any other? Like, do you prefer the horror genre? Do you prefer the fantasy genre? Like, which one do you find that you connect most with?
Definitely the horror.
Okay.
Mhm.
Okay.
Yeah,
So,
I am not a after having DM'd for D&D, it's I like the fantasy every once in a while, but I feel like it's way too saturated.
okay.
And not a lot of people are willing to dip their toes into extremely dark, menacing content. Whereas World of Darkness system, they lean very heavily into that, and
It's
that's
in the
kind of my
name.
thing.
It's basically in the name, and there's always all those content warnings they put on the first few pages of those books. Thing that I also like about it is that there's lots of different ways that you can approach the world of darkness. In D&D, it's kind of like, well, it's going to be fantastical. It's going to be an adventuring party style. It's going to have very similar elements no matter which way you go about it. But in World of Darkness, you've got Hunter, which is, a lot like Supernatural. It's a lot like Van Helsing. It's all this different stuff. And then you got Vampire, and then you got Werewolves, and of course, in the older editions, and hopefully coming soon in the newer editions, Mage, Wraith, Changeling. Like there's so much to absorb in that world. Whereas in D&D, it's you're a hero, you're trying to save the world or a town or a village or whatever the case may be, and you're going to be fighting fantastical monsters and do dungeon crawls and that kind of
Yeah.
stuff. What of the splats from the World of Darkness, which one calls to you the most? I think everybody has their favorite, their go-to. Would it be Hunter? Would it be Werewolf, Vampire, something else? Which one do you find that you enjoy the most?
Hunter.
Hunter. Which is funny because that's not the common go to. It's usually Mage or Vampire or Werewolf. But Hunter, what about Hunter do you enjoy the most?
I like the human aspect of it. I love the fact that your life is on the line. The fact that for most of the games that I have uh, run, the people are kind of, I would say, new to the system, new to becoming hunters, new to experiencing the world of darkness. And if you're a vampire, you're a werewolf, you're a demon, a changeling, you know about the supernatural world, and nothing about it is scary.
Right.
But coming in from from the point of a human, it's like you go around the corner and you suddenly see a guru in Krino's form. That's terrifying. Hunter
Yeah.
or not, that's terrifying. I like that, oh my God, I'm gonna die. Like this thing hit me and I'm going to die. Whereas, you're a vampire and you get hit. Okay, yeah, you take 4 superficial damage. Big whoop.
Yeah, and especially in fifth edition Hunter, one of the things that I love is that it's not over the top supernatural. You get to
Hmm.
dabble in some supernatural elements, like you might know a little bit of magic, or you might have certain affinities that help you, in a supernatural way. But for the most part, it is very grounded. It is very realistic and believable. And I think it's something that any one of us can access and relate to in some fashion as it's the Scooby Gang. It's the
Yeah.
you're the only line of defense that you know of without getting into orgs and everything else, but you're
Hmm.
the only line of defense that you know of against this thing that the rest of the world overlooks or has no knowledge about. But that the human element is something that I've always appreciated about World of Darkness in general. It's very relatable, it's very accessible. Even if you are playing vampire or werewolf, there's still very realistic, grounded, relatable elements to it that make it really, really easy to access and get into and possibly at times even lose yourself in because it's something that we all know. It's places, we've all been or at least we can go to if we want to at one point or another. And that makes it very exciting. I don't know. To me, it makes it very, very exciting and a lot more enjoyable than, okay, I'm picturing Lord of the Rings in any D&D game I play, no matter how
Yeah.
the setting is described, like elves look like elves from the movies or from, books or whatever. Whereas in Vampire, it's like I've been to that building, I've driven down that street, or if not, I could. At least I
Mhm.
could. I can get the Google Maps of downtown Chicago if we're playing a game in Chicago and actually see it and know what it would smell like and understand what the streets would feel like and all these sensations. So that's very cool. So tell me about your typical backdrop for your World of Darkness games. Is there a particular place that you like to set the games in? Does it vary? What's your usual go-to for your games? Where do you like to stage them?
Any, I would say major city
Okay.
or near a major city. I'm not particular about a location. I have a hunter game that is currently set in what was it, Bluefield, Appalachia.
Okay.
Then I had a vampire game that was set in New York. I currently have a hunter game set in Boston. I have a werewolf game in New Orleans. So I'm kind of all over the place.
How much research do you put into or go into when you do go to set it in a place that you might not necessarily live in or might not necessarily be familiar with? How much time do you spend prepping for those kind of games? Because I usually like to base my games of wherever I am, because then when I'm out getting groceries or I'm out running errands, I can at least be absorbing the information I would need for the game. But to set it someplace across the country or in some cases across the world, places I've never been, how much time do you put into getting ready for games like that?
I would, for any session, I'm probably spending, I'd say, a week
Oh my
doing
goodness.
research
Okay.
for a, yeah, for any location. Just because I'm not familiar with a lot of places. So I want to be able to give you as close of a an experience, like, or as good of an experience. Like if I say, yeah, you're walking down this particular street and there's this one tree here, I want you to Google map it and zoom in with the satellite and see that tree there. I want you to know exactly what's there. So it's not like a random area of, oh, here's
Generic parking
yeah,
lot or
generic
whatever.
parking lot.
Like, yeah, you want to be able to describe and at least be able to visualize or show, in the cases of
Mhm.
some images, what it would actually look like. I think it's also nice that most cities kind of have a similar feel.
Mhm.
Even if you've never been there, the difference between Chicago and New York, yes, there are differences. I wouldn't say anything to the contrary to upset my New York or Chicago viewers. But there are similarities. You're going to hear the same kind of hum of the city, the same sort of background noises. A lot of the smells will be the same. A subway is a subway is a subway pretty much
Yeah.
anywhere you go. So I think that having those things in common help. But yeah, it is good that you put that time into really getting to know the area and know what neighborhoods you want to be based out of, or what locations you want to feature in those stories. So you've got a game that you're actually kind of working up towards, that you have seats available for on Start Playing, your Lights Camera Bloodlust game, Hunter the Fifth Edition game. Uh, what can you tell me about that game, and maybe we can get you a few more players to sit there, because I know there are a lot of people who love Hunter or are unfamiliar with Hunter but are open to trying it. What can you tell me about that particular game as kind of like a sneak preview or a sales pitch to people we might be able to get at that table?
Yeah, so you're going to be hunters in this game, and people have gone missing. These are aspiring models, actresses, actors, musicians, anybody who goes to Hollywood to make it big. These people have been contacted by a talent agency, which there are many in California, but this one particular has been going above and beyond to try and find new people. Very early on, you are going to discover that these people are being auctioned off to be ghouls.
Okay.
And those ghouls are going to be working in Hollywood, changing Hollywood for kindred society. And it's obviously your job to try to stop it.
I love that because it's a simple concept about human trafficking, but it's set in a perfect location and adds so many more elements to it with the Hollywood backdrop, with the idea of these are people. I mean, that's what that city preys off of. That or New York is people moving there thinking they're going to get their shot or their opportunity, and it's a perfect place for vampires to swoop in and manipulate and do their thing. And so I think that's a fantastic idea. Is there a particular time period you like to set your games in, or is it usually modern day or modern ish day? Or do you dabble in time periods outside of that as well?
Um, Currently, all of the games that I'm running are modern period, but I do have a not currently listed, but I do have a 1800s vampire game.
Oh, that's
So,
cool.
yeah,
And that's like the perfect time period to run a
exactly.
vampire game. I love the Victorian era style vampire games because that's like the prime height of vampires to me, or at least vampire mythos. And so that's really really fantastic. What are some of your favorite mechanics in the world of darkness? Because it seems like you have an knack for mechanics, an interest in mechanics, and learning them. Are there any particular things that, especially in the fifth edition, that you're really drawn to, or that you think are an asset in storytelling as far as mechanics go?
I really, really love the humanity mechanics for vampire. I genuinely feel like that should kind of be a staple through all of them, just because even as a human, you can lose your humanity. You can become more callous. You can essentially lose, lose your own mind and become insane. A babbling, person on the street or a psycho killer because of the things that you've experienced, or becoming a saint.
Yeah, it's funny because they usually say most humans upon embrace start at humanity 7, but
Hmm.
I've definitely known people in my own real life that I'm like, you're not a humanity 7. Like
Yeah.
you're hovering around like a 4 or a 5 on average. And of course people who are more, but it is a wide, like vast possibility in terms of where people land on that spectrum, and the fact that Hunter especially doesn't
Hmm.
have a real system for that. Don't get me wrong, I love the desperation system
Yeah.
as well as the blood system, the hunger system, and the rage system for werewolf. But yeah, the fact that there isn't any kind of humanity chart is surprising to me because as hunters, you're going to be exposed to all of the horrible shit about
Hmm.
each and every setting, whereas vampires, it's pretty straightforward as to what they could encounter and what they're used to and what is normal for them. But with hunters, all of it's unusual, all of
Yeah.
it's strange, all of it's horrifying. And yeah, that there isn't any kind of scale sliding downwards. The more and more you get exposed to, the more and more your own personal humanity starts to deteriorate. That is definitely something I'd love to see them add in, or at least you know give a possibility of with some mechanics at some point, because I agree with you. Like the humanity system is something that sets World of Darkness apart from any other game I've played other than Call of Cthulhu. I think Call of
Yeah.
Cthulhu and their sanity system is kind of similar to that.
Hmm.
But I do like that Werewolf has Hirano and Hoglosk. I think
Yeah.
that does replace that enough to kind of make up for the fact that it doesn't have anything like it. But yeah, the fact that a Hunter doesn't have anything
I
is
know, it's really weird.
absolutely unusual to me. So you have not only decided to run games, but one of the features you have on your Start Playing that is absolutely amazing to me is that you teach, that you have the opportunity for people to sign up and learn hunter or werewolf or vampire, that you have separate slots for each of those as learning opportunities. What inspired you to do that? Because a lot of the Start Playing storytellers I've talked to, yeah, they'll teach and play to a certain degree, but they're mostly there to run the game. You decided to become a teacher, which is one of the hardest jobs in general in the world, let alone adding the TTRPG element to it. What made you want to do that?
I have kids, and
Okay.
so my kids, they like obviously doing the things that I do, and so I was like, hey, I'm going to teach my eldest child how to play D&D. I have a lot of friends and family who don't play systems, but they obviously hear me talking about it and they want to get into it. So I started teaching them. And then I was like, I mean, there's a lot of people who want to play, but they're hesitant. Even if your advertisement says beginner friendly, they message constantly, I'm not familiar with the system and I don't know if you would take me, you know, can I just sit in and listen? And I'm like, sure. So I just figured, I mean, why not just advertise? I'll teach you how to play.
Yeah.
So it's more of a comfortable setting for a lot of people instead of being thrown into a game and just kind of here's the book, like how I was. Here's the book. Here's some dice.
Good luck.
Lo- now they feel more comfortable and they're more willing to jump into other games after they learn, even if it's one session with me. They feel more comfortable after the fact to join another game. Like I've never played, but I had someone teach me.
Right. I'm also constantly surprised at how many people are brought into role playing in general through World of Darkness.
Hmm.
Like, of course you're going to get your people who have played D&D or Pathfinder or other games, but I think there's a surprising amount of people who have never TTRPG'd before, but there is something about World of Darkness that entices them, that calls
Hmm.
to them, and that makes them want to do it. And so the fact that you do offer these small, intimate classes for people is incredible, because learning at a table is so much pressure and is so stressful. Being thrown into the deep end of, you're playing with other people, no matter how patient or accommodating there are, you are going to feel a pressure of like, well, they're not having fun because we're having to pause and explain things to me, and wanting to learn in another way. So to offer that as an option and an opportunity for people is so cool and incredible of you to do, because I think that you're right. It's going to be way more comfortable if they get to have, either a one-on-one with you or a small group of people who are all at the same learning level
Hmm.
as each other. They're all going to be understanding of, okay, explain this to all of us again. We all need to understand this mechanic or all want to learn this thing. That is just so cool to do. How quickly do you find people pick up this system? Now, I'm sure your teaching ability helps a lot, but I've found that World of Darkness is one of the more accessible systems because it's not as crunchy, it's not as mechanical. It's more like, just talk to me about what you're thinking, what you're doing, what your character's feeling through this process, and then we'll do a dice roll if necessary
Hmm.
for a specific thing. How do you find how would you say most of your people have picked up the World of Darkness system if they came into it with no experience?
I feel like a lot of people that I have taught the system to picked it up pretty easily. Some of them never came in or came in with no experience of tabletop games in general. And I think the mechanic part of it, they pick up pretty easily. It's the role play. A lot of
Okay.
people come in and they're uncomfortable with being a character, acting out. And I'm like, well, that's the point of the system. You're supposed to be this person. You're supposed to act this way.
Right.
How would your character act? And I mean, it's touch and go when it comes to the role play part. I feel like that takes some time of just getting comfortable, not only with yourself doing this, but with the people that you're with. Because a lot of people they say that they like to learn each other's limits before they actually become comfortable with role play. But yeah, the mechanics, I mean, it's pretty straightforward. Just like, hey, do this and this, and then you get this number. These dots plus these dots equals this.
Yeah.
Math.
The dots equating to dice and pools, and that anything 6 and above is considered a success, 5 and below is a failure. That has been such a blessing, and it's one of the things that I've loved about the system for 25 plus years now is that it's not a lot of math.
Hmm.
I did AD&D. That's a lot of math. Like,
It
you
is.
you need a degree in math to be able to figure out THACO and all that stuff. But World of Darkness is like, yes, we use dice. Yes, it's still a role playing game. Yes, there are elements of that, but we all know how to count to 6. We know,
Hmm.
we can tell when a number is 6 and above. It's yay, good. Okay, that counts as 1. And all that. It's very much more digestible and a lot easier to comprehend and break down then okay, I've got a 20 plus 15 minus 2. You know, like it's a lot in D&D and D and other game systems that require you to really break it down, and it can be very jarring and
Mhm.
bring a halt to a lot of good momentum in a story to have to stop and figure out all of that before moving on to the next thing. Whereas it feels very fluid in World of Darkness to me. It feels like it just keeps the momentum going. And that is clearly important to them because they
Mhm.
say that all throughout the books, all throughout the rules, like, hey, whatever keeps the story going, whatever keeps people having fun, like mechanics are meant to be kind of like an add-on or augment slightly your gameplay, but it's not meant to detract from the overall gameplay and the overall story. And this might be an obvious answer, but what of the game systems you have picked up and learned do you think is the easiest one to teach?
World of Darkness.
I kind of figured that was the answer, but I figured I'd throw it out there in case you had an oddball one that I didn't know of. But yeah, I have found it to be one of the easier systems to teach and for people to pick up and learn. Because as long as they can tell a good story, the dice stuff, you just learn it by doing it. You don't have
Mhm.
to know it going in, and I think that's a wonderful thing. What has been the most unusual or strangest character concept you've ever been given, whether it's for hunter or werewolf or vampire or any of those? What's the most unusual one that's come across your way?
Honestly, nothing.
Really?
Yeah, everybody that I have had at my table plays it safe. Um, Now, the games that I have been in, the person who taught me how to play World of Darkness, they they are willing to go to the extreme with their characters. So from that aspect, I have seen, things that would be in a D&D game. Someone who is so heavily focused on uh like obfuscate and, dark tendrils, things coming out, and I'm like, oh, I didn't know you could do stuff like this. I'm like, yeah,
Oh yeah.
the world's your oyster when it comes to this. And I'm like, oh, well, everybody else plays, I'm Harry Joe, the mailman.
Yeah, right. Something pretty plain and down to earth, but there are, I mean, especially in the older editions and when eventually Mage comes out, I don't know how they're going to do it, but with Mage, it's like if you can think it, you can probably do it. Like if you can
Hmm.
imagine it, it's possible. And that's just so freeing. I've found as well as a player and as a storyteller is there's nothing too unusual. So if
Hmm.
I want to have, an NPC come in and do something, regardless of if there's a mechanic or a rule for it, it's very encouraged to just like if it's fun, do it. If it, there is some sort of lore or older edition, something that can say, yeah, it's fine, do it. Like whatever it is, just do it, and well, it'll make sense.
Yeah.
So there's nothing out of the realms of possibility there that are available to you, and yeah, as a storyteller, that is super empowering and super freeing because I've run D&D, I've run Pathfinder, I've run countless systems, and I've always found that a lot of other systems outside of World of Darkness are very restrictive.
They are.
Uh, Especially if you've got a lot of rules lawyers or stuff at the table that, you know, really know the mechanics super well. They'll be like, well, that's not how that spell works, or that's not how that ability works. Whereas in, again, World of Darkness, I've found people to be a lot more forgiving and a lot more free form. They're very vague in their descriptions of stuff that allow you that flexibility and that freedom to really play with it and experiment with it. And I find that to be great. So, a rapid fire question I like to ask people is what is your favorite clan, creed, tribe? Since you do all three systems, I'm going to ask you all three. What are your favorites of those three, or which ones do you identify with most?
Vampire is ministry,
Okay.
hunter is inquisitive, and werewolf probably silver fangs.
Okay. Okay. That's interesting because I think a lot of people lump Silverfangs in with Ventru, and Ventru don't get nearly as much love as they should sometimes. But yeah, okay, that's an interesting choice. What about those individually call to you specifically? Inquisitive, I could see. For you especially, I could see why Inquisitive is your creed. But what about the Ministry? Because the Ministry is complicated.
They are very complicated. One, it's also the very first clan that I have ever played.
Okay,
So it kind of just has like, that little personal spot in my heart.
sure.
But two, I like the complexity of them, that they're nobody. They kind of they're that little whisper in your ear, the manipulation, the subterfuge, like it's just that's just my thing. I love to be that little voice in the back of your ear, like you should probably not do that, but it would be funny.
Yeah.
And then when it comes to werewolf being silver fangs, Ventru is my second favorite.
Oh, well, there you
So
go. Okay. That makes
that kind of
sense.
just explains it right there. Ventru is my second favorite.
There's nothing quite like the ministry among the werewolf tribes. There's nothing
Yeah.
that scratches that itch. But if Ventru is your second favorite, Silverfangs absolutely makes sense as a tribe that would call to you. So I would ask, well, tell me more about that kind of discovering World of Darkness, because you said you played the video game, but then you had mentioned that somebody had mentored you and taught you. Talk me through that process. What do you remember about that game? What do you remember about your first character? And what did you find were some maybe speed bumps in the learning process for you getting into World of Darkness?
So I actually joined the World of Darkness server
Okay.
and just kind of put my little fillers out there like, hey, if anybody's looking for a player, I'm looking to learn because I'm looking to be a storyteller. So I only join games now if I need to learn the system.
That makes sense.
So
And just for as long as it takes for you to
yeah,
learn the
as long as
system, I
it as
assume.
long as I need to know, then okay, I'm out back.
That makes
But
sense.
yeah, so this group, formerly called Black Magic Conclave, but they are now called Solution 9. They reached out to me and they were looking for somebody to join their games. They stream their games. So they're like, if you're comfortable with streaming, and I was like, I'm a Twitch streamer, so yeah, that's perfect for me. Just know that I am a baby at this. I have no idea. I don't even have the books yet. So I learned through doing,
Right.
and they were very very like welcoming. They like there was no, I wouldn't even say there was a speed bump. It was like he would explain as he's doing something. He would just kind of like as a side, like at literally as like a footnote, just kind of like, yeah, we're gonna go do this, oh by the way, so you know what this means. And it was kind of like so fluid in the conversation that I didn't even realize that he was teaching me how to do it. He just kind of did it.
Well,
And
and
after
that's
the fact I was like, wow, I know how to play vampire.
that's such a talent too, to be able to so
Hmm.
seamlessly incorporate, explaining the mechanics, breaking everything down, and teaching without disrupting gameplay. And again, it's something that I can't herald enough about World of Darkness, is it's so much easier to do in World
Yes.
of Darkness than any other system, because it is all kind of one. The
Hmm.
mechanics are as, integrated into story as the story prompts mechanics. It's so seamless and fluid that you're never doing anything, I've found, in World of Darkness that isn't important for the moment that you're doing it. Like there's a lot of
Hmm.
things in D&D that you could take for granted, or that might be kind of jarring, or a little off in gameplay, like calculating damage dice and all this other stuff. But in World of Darkness, it all just blends together really, really nicely. So it does make sense that you could pick it up as you go. You're not having to ask about spells that end up not being relevant at all to the situation, or
Hmm.
whatever the case may be. It's all relevant. Everything's
Yeah.
relevant in one way or another in World of Darkness. So that's really cool. So you played a ministry as your first character. Have you dabbled in any other clans since then? I mean, have you played in any other Chronicles, or did you just kind of learn it and be like, okay, I'm a storyteller. No more games for me. Let's just do this thing.
No, I actually, whenever Solution 9 has a game, I'm like primarily almost always there to play. I have played since then a oh god, a Ventru and a Gangrel.
Okay, yeah, those are kind of two very diverse other clans. There's elements of them both in Ministry,
Hmm.
but they are also kind of a little further out in a specific direction. So it is good to explore those elements. Are there any clans that you avoid that you're like, I will never play this clan. I have no interest in playing this clan, or this creed, or this tribe. I'll expand it to all the universe, that they just don't appeal to you. Running for them is fine, NPCing them is fine, but I mean, if you yourself as a player were to sit down for a game, you're like, I don't play Toreador, or I don't play, whatever this
Toreador.
is. It Toreador?
Yeah.
Oh, yeah, that's amazing. So yeah, so Toreador is just not nothing
Yeah.
about it appeals to you.
I cannot do Toreador. I know obviously that you can make your Toreador as any type of artist, but it's just the whole artistry. And it's obviously kind of strange given my occupation. But
But it makes
I
sense
can't do that.
too. Yeah, it makes sense too at the same time. Is there a clan that you have, obviously you've probably story told all of the different clans, or at least a
Mhm.
lot of them. Is there a clan though that you have been like chomping at the bit that you've wanted to play? That you're like,
Smitzy.
Zmeets, I get it. There's that venture connection again though too, because
Exactly.
that need to dominate and control is absolutely Ventru so much. So that's it all the pieces fit together really, really, really nicely. So it definitely makes sense. Um yeah, that's absolutely incredible. Is there a story that you've wanted to tell, whether it's from a particular part of lore or a particular setting that you've wanted to hold the game in that you haven't yet, that you're building up towards, or that you're excited about, or that you're like gathering research on to do so?
It's actually the game that I just started, I'd say about 2 weeks ago. It's called Slaughters of South End. It's a hunter game.
Okay.
And it is, I would say, probably one of the darkest games that I probably will ever run. Um, if there is a trigger, it will probably be in that game.
Interesting. Okay. Okay. I know that storytelling incorporates a lot of safety tools, and I like to find out kind of everyone else's safety tools that they use because it helps me modify my own, or reminds me of something that I might not be covering in them. What is your process of safety tools and getting people involved, whether it's consent sheets, session zero conversations? What's your process when you go to start a new campaign or work with new players? What's your process for all that?
So first off, I already have my own Google Forms with my own personal consent sheet. That consent sheet has everything ranging from are you comfortable being on camera? Are you comfortable with voice? All the way to, these things might be covered, things relating to animals, animal harm, people, body horror, anything and everything you can think of. Obviously, even ranging all the way to politics, religion, because some people might not be comfortable with that. And if, we have the green, yellow, red system. So if you put anything yellow, then it's an automatic conversation with me one on one, just so I kind of get a feel for like, hey, I'm okay with this, but I just don't want it to cross this line.
Yeah, whether you want to veil it, or whether you need a line, or if there's a specific part of that overall subject that needs
Hmm.
to be. Okay, that makes sense. That makes sense.
Yeah. And then after that, I do this for every single player that I've had. That's just the initial before we even agree to have you sit at the table. Just because I want to make sure that you are going to be a good fit for my table, just as I want to be sure I'm a good, storyteller for the player.
Right, and it
Um,
is. It's a
mhm.
back and forth thing. You got to make sure that both parties, have some sort of chemistry, or that there's a connection there, and that everybody's comfortable in the situation for sure.
Mhm.
So, safety tools were brand new to me as of like 3 or 4 years ago, and it's mostly because I'd played with just friends or in smaller environments where I pretty much knew everybody. And being an older style gamer, we didn't have that for decades. It was we had conversations at like session zeros or stuff, or we would talk during sessions about stuff. But I know that when we started this server, Rebecca Mimic, one of our moderators, put together our consent form, and I was shocked at how comprehensive it can get. Because you're right, like breaking down, talk about religions, talk about every single potential trigger. There were triggers that I for the longest time hadn't even considered to be
Hmm.
triggers, and so just breaking down that stuff, it can get very, very complicated. Are there any things, because I know when I run World of Darkness, things like physical harm and abuse, mental domination or control, those are kind of intrinsically part of the game. Are there any triggers that you're like, these are going to happen regardless? Like, if this is too much of an issue, maybe this isn't the game for you. Do you have anything like that where it's just kind of obvious that if they say this is something they don't work well with, that they're not going to be a good fit for the game?
Anything that kind of involves politics, because obviously vampire is heavy on the politics, even if it's not real world. And then kind of like if I like to give people that warning, especially if you look at start playing. My trigger warning is extensive.
Yeah.
We might not cover it, but I want to give you that option of knowing like there might be stuff, talk of genocide and terrorism. There might be talk of, assault. And like if you're not comfortable with that, I'm okay with that. I understand. But there's a certain point where in my games, if I need to cover it and you go, I don't even want to hear about it, I can't have you at the table because even if it's an aside, like, oh yeah, this happened, and we don't go into detail about it, if it's too much of a trigger, I can't have that person at my table
Right.
just because it kind of takes away from the theme of the game.
Right. I mean it, and I I've kind of coined the phrase amongst our server of it's the world of darkness, not the world of happy shiny puppies. Like,
Hmm.
maybe you're more of a fantastical player if you prefer immense escapism from real world issues, because the real world is very much plays a factor into World of Darkness games. Yes, you could pretend that the world isn't like it is, but I think to run an authentic World of Darkness game, you have to take factors in like racism,
Hmm.
sexism, all of the isms out there. Those are all part of it. Even if you don't shine a spotlight on them, you don't want to not acknowledge their existence, not acknowledge,
Exactly.
especially if you're trying to authentically create a setting. Like St.
Hmm.
Petersburg, Florida, where our game is based, has a lot of issues. I love it, but it has a lot of issues. And I never want to glaze over those issues or pretend they don't exist, because I am trying to make it as authentic of an experience as possible. And especially when you get to major cities, that is a clusterfuck
Yeah.
of things that those places have or deal with. But I know that you want to do them justice. You want to be realistic about it. And that is one of the goods and potentially bads of the World of Darkness, is like you kind of have to embrace some of that stuff into your setting if you want it to be live the game to its full potential, in my
Hmm.
mind. Uh, One of the things that I've heard from people that kind of makes them shy away from World of Darkness is the lore. The fact that there is so much lore that you could get a degree in it. There should be college degrees for World of Darkness lore, because there's just so much that it can seem very, very overwhelming. How do you approach lore? Do you dive into it, or do you just kind of take what you need from it and build your own thing otherwise? Like, how do you involve lore into your games? How do you relay it to players? Like, what level does lore take in your storytelling?
Lore takes zero importance in my games.
Okay.
I don't like relying on lore just because I feel like that kind of restricts me.
Okay. Interesting.
So, if, Baron blah, blah, blah is part of the lore for Chicago, unless I feel like I want and or need to have this individual there, I'm not going to. It's going to be my world. Most of the games that I run, it's homebrew, as they consider it. Um, Now, that doesn't mean, of course, that Baron blah 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 might not make an appearance.
Right, right.
But
If
a
you
lot of
find
my
an
players,
appropriate place for it, or if you
yeah,
find an urge to have it.
yeah, a lot of my players are brand new, and that's their one of their main concerns. It's the whole lore. Oh, I need to know the entire history of this? Like, nope, you guys are brand new. Don't even worry about it. If it comes up, then I will mention it to you.
Yeah, it's nice to have it available to you and have it as a backup option or as something you can draw upon for inspiration or, whatever. But to be able to create your own thing has its own benefits as well of just being free of it and just cutting it out almost entirely or just having
Hmm.
it as a fallback. There is something really, really nice about that. I try to incorporate the lore as much as possible just because I love it. But
Hmm.
I do understand that. I do understand the freedom of that. And that's why I avoid a lot of the major lore based areas like Chicago or anything like that. That's why I said it in St. Pete, not even Tampa, because I'm like, I know there's a few novels that have a Tampa lore, and like, I don't want to deal with any of that. So
Yeah.
having the ability to step away from that is very, very beneficial. But as for you personally, have you ever taken any interest in the lore of the World of Darkness? Do you have like favorite pieces of lore or favorite stories from the lore that you just enjoy as a person or take anything from as a person, or are you just kind of like it exists, it's good, it's its own thing, not really for me?
I genuinely like the lore with the Justicars. Justicar Par is my favorite. I actually
Excellent
incorporated
choice.
her. I incorporated her in the end of my most recent vampire game.
Okay.
Um, and one of the players had done a little bit of research by herself, and she learned about the Justicars. And so she's like, "Oh, well, I think I want to dive into potentially becoming one." And so I was like, "Okay, cool. Let me deep dive into the lore of them." And that's when I found Par, and I was like, "Okay, this is great. You have lore sheets that are related to her, so it's just perfect."
That's amazing. And that's another cool thing about 5th edition that didn't really exist as much in other editions is I love lore sheets. I love the concept and the
Hmm.
mechanics behind lore sheets. I think it's a shame that hunters don't have lore sheets. I do like that they brought them into werewolf and vampire, but it would have been nice for hunter to get a little bit of love like that as well, especially with the organizations.
Yeah.
And even if it's not the same game as it was in the older editions, I trust them enough to be able to come up with some stuff to bring that element in. But that's something that is sorely missing in my mind from Hunter is that they do not have any kind of lore sheet or anything like that that can be brought into the game. What is a mechanic, and maybe you can do it for each system or just overall, aside from humanity, because I think we did have the humanity conversation, but what is a mechanic you'd like to see or wish they had brought into World of Darkness games, either by specific splat or overall, that is missing currently?
I feel like having something that would allow all three to work together cohesively.
Okay.
I feel
Like a
like the
monster
dice,
squad thing.
yeah, like I feel like the dice system obviously is relatively the same, but in the instance of kind of like going back to the humanity thing, if a human is not able, like, okay, rousing, for example, you can't do that as a human. You
Right.
can't draw upon this inner piece of yourself
There's no blood
to,
surging or anything
yeah,
similar to that. Right.
you have to rely on your desperation, which you don't want desperation. So you have to rely on something bad happening for you to be able to hopefully do something better for yourself. I also feel like, just kind of like I guess one way to just kind of mesh all three together, because I do have people who are, I want to be a werewolf, I want to be a hunter, I want to be a vampire. But now when you're looking at this, the disciplines kind of don't match up with what the edges and the perks are, and then the gifts. And it's just kind of like this whole clusterfuck of just things that don't mesh well, but they do, and then having the jump between 3 books, just kind of putting it all together in one of like, "Hey, here's an aside. If you wanna play this version of everybody works together, here's one character sheet, and this is how everything's gonna work together."
It's funny that you say that because I have found 5th edition to allow for that blending more than any previous edition of the game. Like,
Mhm.
there was no way to run a werewolf and a vampire side by side in the older editions. The
Oh,
mechanics
yeah.
were far too different. Even in 20th anniversary, like those splats should never meet. They should never cross over unless it's a storytelling side where, of course, you can have a group of vampires fight a group of hunters, but you can't have PC versions in the same group because
Yeah.
they're so different. But yeah, in 5th edition, I feel like it's possible. Like at least
Mhm.
they've made it more accessible by having a similar system in Desperation, Hunger, and Rage than they did previously. Uh,
Mhm.
but yeah, I think there is still a little bit of a barrier there, even slightly, that makes it a little bit harder for those two things to blend without a lot of work on behalf of the storyteller to like be familiar with every system and see how
Yeah.
they would correlate and how they would cross over and how they would balance each other. So that's a very valid point. Have you dabbled with any of the older editions of the game, or have you tried 20th anniversary or read about 20th anniversary in regards to World of Darkness?
I have read, uh, V20 and Changeling, and I was looking at Demons recently,
Okay.
and I think that's it. I just purchased, Mage Ascension.
Okay. That being said, 5th edition has had this pattern lately of rolling out at least one splat per year now.
Mhm.
World of Darkness has been pretty good about scheduling it, with Hunter being last year, Werewolf being this year. What do you think is their next drop? What do you think is coming next of the World of Darkness systems? Because they haven't said for sure. A lot of people are pretty confident it's going to be Mage,
Yeah.
but yeah, so you think Mage?
Oh, yeah.
That makes sense. That makes sense. I was really hoping they'd drop in another of the lesser known ones, like a Wraith in between Werewolf and
Mhm.
Mage, because I have this fear that after they publish the three major ones, the other ones will either get forgotten about or just dropped to the side. So when they released Hunter, I actually thought that was a really interesting move by them to go from vampire to hunter and not go vampire, werewolf, mage right away, back to back to back. But yeah, it does seem like mage is probably what's coming next without any actual confirmation.
Mhm.
But that does seem what's next. Are you excited for Mage, or are you, because it's different enough that it could be a little bit of a shock to the system.
It
Uh,
is. Yeah.
at least in the older editions, for sure it was. Are you looking forward to Mage's release? Is that something that you think you're going to try to add to your lexicon immediately, or is it something you're going to really have to take your time with before incorporating into games that you run?
Oh, yeah, no, that's something that I'm definitely gonna have to take my time with. Looking at the older editions, everything with the paradox and things like I'm like, I don't understand any of this.
Yeah,
So if they come out with a fifth edition version, I know that I'm definitely gonna have to take my time or find a game.
yeah,
Hopefully, somebody who knows Mage will at least be able to understand fifth edition better and kind of jump in one of those games. But yeah, what I am hoping for, which I highly doubt we're going to get, is Changeling because who
yeah.
doesn't want to be a Fae?
For sure. I think that it's interesting because fifth edition has also incorporated a lot of the Chronicles of Darkness material into this new world that they're creating with World of Darkness. So there's this ongoing debate amongst Changeling fans of what kind of Changeling we're going to get. If we're going to get the Dreaming or if we're going to get the Lost.
Hmm.
And My personal hope is that it's going to be more steered towards the lost and a little less the dreaming, because I found the dreaming to be a huge departure from what the overall feel of World of Darkness is in pretty much every other splat. But what are your thoughts on that, and how much have you kind of delved into Changeling or learning about Changeling?
My experience is dreaming.
Okay.
So I feel like changing dreaming is I feel like it would be a good, I guess, break from the world of darkness because you can still make dreaming dark.
Yeah.
But I feel like something whimsical, which I feel like is kind of like what they were going for with that, something a little more whimsical, a little more lighthearted for people who might not like extremely dark content. I think that would be a good break. Um, and I do like the concept, of the changelings. Like, hey, you're a vampire, you're boring. I don't want to hang out with you because, you just stand around and you just look pretty all day. I want to go jump off of a cliff. Bye. And then you go hang out with the werewolves.
I'm gonna go bring a mailbox to life. I'll go hang out with mages. No, that's interesting. Did you look into Chronicles of Darkness at all? Because as an old school World of Darkness player, I unfortunately was very turned off by Chronicles and never really gave it a fair shot. Just because it was so different. But have you looked into any of the Chronicles material before, or is that something you'd consider adding to your lexicon?
I have looked into it and I have not found anything appealing with it. So,
Okay, I'm not the only one. Thank God. Because I've had a few people on here who love Chronicles of Darkness
yeah,
for one reason or another, but I'm like, but this doesn't scratch that itch for me. It's
it
not. It's
doesn't.
too different. Although some of the mechanics they have brought in has been good, like the hunger dice and everything like that, as opposed to blood points. They made it a lot easier. They streamlined a lot with Chronicles, or what they took from Chronicles. So I'm grateful for that. But the setting was just too different for me to ever really get into or enjoy. So I want to talk about your streaming a little bit, because you do stream, and I'm going to actually switch frames here for a second. You stream on Rolls After Dark on Twitch, which people can find at twitch.tv/Rolls After Dark. And it seems like your Twitch channel is primarily focused on your D&D campaign, which I'd love to hear a little bit more about. But first I would ask, how did you get into streaming? What made you decide to give streaming a try and get into that? Because with TTRPGing, that's enough of a learning curve. Then storytelling and DMing is enough of a learning curve. Then you throw streaming into the mix, which is like a whole different world. How did you get into streaming, and what made you decide to bring TTRPGs to stream?
I got into streaming because of the pandemic.
Okay.
Um, we used to do primarily home games, and a lot of my players, obviously, with the pandemic, couldn't come over. So we started doing online games, and then everybody was saying, hey, we can, do the critical role thing. We can start streaming. I was like, I mean, you guys buy me the equipment. Sure, I'll do it.
Yeah, right. It is an expensive upfront cost, that's for
It is.
sure. Especially if you want to do it well, or even remotely near the level of a critical role or anything like that. There's a lot that goes into it. What was the process like getting that all set up for you? Did you have somebody do a lot of the setup stuff? Because I know I started streaming and I had to basically learn a brand new language effectively for setting everything up and getting inundated with technology that I had no previous exposure to. How did you find that process working for you?
My husband actually is the one who helped me get into streaming.
Okay.
He's very technical. So if I don't know how to do something, if I have something go wrong, it's like, husband, help. And he comes to my rescue. He essentially just sat down and looked over. We used to use Streamlabs and then we switched over to OBS.
Same.
And he had to learn how to do that before ended up teaching me how to do it. And then that's when I started doing it myself.
Let's talk about your D&D game and your Twitch channel. Apologies to our World of Darkness love viewers who are only interested in hearing about that, but I do want to hear about the D&D game. How long has this game been running? What can you tell me about it? Let's get you some more viewers because we have a lot of people who love both. Uh, talk to me about this campaign and you know getting it on Twitch.
So the campaign setting is Ace Tell Dawn. I initially started it as an evil campaign, and that one ran for about 2.5 years. And then we finished that game. I started running it on StartPlaying, got a whole bunch of new players, and that game is currently going on 2 years. So the whole setting we've been running for nearly 5 years.
And this is your own created setting. This is something
Yes.
that you came up with. Okay.
hmm
So 5 years overall, or 5 years with this current group?
No, 2 years with this current group, and then 2.5 with with the older group.
And what? How many episodes have you streamed so far?
Uh,
Approximately.
ni- 97, I think 97 or 98 with the old group, and then this current group we just hit 46.
And what can you tell me about the setting and the story so far? Again, I want to get you some new viewers. So what's kind of the Reader's Digest version of the story that you've been telling and of the setting?
uh,
It's
a
probably complicated, but break it down as best as you
fantasy
can.
Hitler is the best way to put it.
Okay, okay, interesting. So kind of like a battling against a dictatorship of sorts. Uh, okay,
It is the setting is there's this group called the Church of Iron, and they believe that their god, uh, Ars Malor, is the prophet, and he is the one who hates all other races except for humans.
of course.
All races who are non-human are either taken as slaves, or if you are human adjacent, your ears are clipped to look human-like. You are basically forced after an extended period of your life to essentially kill yourself, and live the life of a human. The heroes in this case are the ones who obviously do not agree with this. They live in the free lands of Ace Taldon, and the Church of Iron are now bringing their beliefs into the free lands and trying. And essentially what they're doing is, if you don't believe in our god, if you do not accept our faith, we're going to bring your village to the ground. And
Interesting.
that's essentially what's been happening this whole time.
That's very cool though, and that's a really good setting for a group. What is the overall makeup of the party, like classes, races, that sort of thing?
We have a Tabaxi Leonin who used to be a human for the Church of Iron. We have a Goblin Cleric, a human artificer, tiefling blood hunter, and an elf ranger.
Okay. What's been one of your favorite moments so far in that story? Whether it's something that you had planned for or something that often happens in storytelling and DMing is the unpredictable, the X factor that players bring to the game. Is there a particular moment that you really enjoyed or a story from the game so far that stands out to you?
So in this most recent playthrough of the game, the Tabaxi Leonin, he found his wife after not having seen her for several years, and discovered that his wife is actually the leader of the rebellion against the Church of Iron, and that she's also married to his brother, the Prophet reincarnated. Um,
Okay.
the player himself, he's very into role play, and every time he has a spell that he needs to cast or something, he writes his own personal speeches. It's very dramatic, it's very beautiful. And we clipped the one scene where he basically had this very long conversation with his wife, and the scene itself, what, like, the words that he was saying to her, yes, this is NPCs, but it brought me to tears. It's just like, I love you and I miss you, and I was just like, I can't do this, like.
That Oscar winning speech from one of the
It
players that
is.
touches your very heart. Ah, that's incredible. Have you thought about bringing any World of Darkness games, or have you previously brought any World of Darkness games to stream before?
I have considered it, but a lot of the players that I have don't want to be on stream.
Okay.
So that's kind of been a hoop that I'm trying to get through. We did start a podcast. We are currently, or I'm currently finishing editing it. But that one's set in London, World of Darkness. Like they're more comfortable with the podcast voice only rather than actually
Makes
being
sense.
seen on screen.
Yeah. So, um, so you're doing the streaming thing and the podcasting thing, which again is its own mammoth task with editing and recording and making sure vocal quality and everything is up to snuff. How many games a week do you run, and how do you balance that all with being a mother and a wife and a family member and all the other responsibilities I'm sure is on your massive, massive list? How many games do you run, and how do you balance it all? Because I know a lot of the people that we work with are people in similar situations that are trying to find that good healthy family balance and everything, and being a professional storyteller, DM on top of it. How do you make it all work?
I am currently running, I'd say, 5 games a week,
Wow. Okay.
and we're hoping to probably bump those numbers up. Um, how I balance it, I just make sure that I have my guaranteed days off.
Okay.
So Thursday is a guaranteed day off at the moment. But obviously, if the slot gets full with a game, then I'm not gonna, turn that down. So as of right now, Thursdays and Saturdays are my guaranteed days. I get one day on the week where I can focus on like actual, real life taking care of appointments and things like that, and
Right.
then obviously the weekend, so I'm not feeling like I don't have my weekends to myself. Saturday is a day where I can actually go out, go to the movies, go on dates with my husband, take my kids out. They're not in school, so
Right.
you
Yeah.
know
Especially in the summers. Yeah.
hmm
That's so impressive and so admirable to be able to make that balance work, because I know a lot of people kind of fall off of TTRPGing, or something's got to give in those situations. It's very, very hard to maintain a balance, and I think that TTRPGs especially are one of the first things to go for a lot of people.
hmm
They have video games or they have other hobbies or interests that always seem to supersede, you know, TTRPGs.
yeah.
So the fact that you are able to balance that all and keep a real, I mean, I imagine your calendar's got to be full, like to be able to
Yeah.
balance all these things. But that's so admirable and so cool. And it sounds like, for the most part, this is kind of your full time gig, is being able to do this, which is such an accolade, and congratulations on that, because that is a rare thing amongst professional storytellers. A lot of people manage a day job or are only able to run a few times a week, but to have 5 games and growing a week is absolutely incredible. What do you do to keep your stories and games straight? Is there a lot of annotation? Do you have documents upon documents and files? How do you keep it all straight for those who would be interested in becoming professionals, or getting into the trying to do it as a full-time gig? How do you keep it all, organized?
I have very good memory.
Okay.
So most of it is locked up in here. And like I could tell you what session one of the first like game that I ran last year was.
Wow. Okay.
But on top of that, I also do have like Google Notes, or Google Docs, and just kind of everything that has been said, every NPC that has been introduced. I put them down in the notes and just go, okay, introduced here, this location, such and such, said bullet notes of everything. So I'm not bogged down. And then at the end, I do write for myself a basically a recap. So I kind of know, hey, this is exactly what happened, blah, 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 blah. So then when I go to prep for the next session, I can look at the notes, see who's been introduced, who hasn't been, and then kind of proceed from there.
Do you have a process or procedure when getting ready for a game? Like, do you have a specific soundtrack for a certain game that you listen to get in a headspace? Because I know, especially shifting between games, shifting between systems, they could be at very drastically different parts of the story. So one night you might be doing a very intense session for one group, and then the next night be expected to do something a little more lighthearted, or they're at a different time in their process. What is that like for you? Do you have any tips or hints for people, again, who either participate in or want to run multiple games? How are you able to shift your mindset between games from going from one game to the next?
Soundtracks. That's my main thing. If it's a dark and gloomy game, I want dark and gloomy music. When I run Cyberpunk, I put on the Cyberpunk soundtrack. Anything that is related to what's happening.
Okay. Okay. So you do, just the music alone is enough to kind of shift your perspective
Oh
or
yeah.
get you in the right headspace for whatever game it is that you're about to run.
Mhm.
Who is your favorite artists? What's on your soundtrack that prepares you for World of Darkness or prepares you for Hunter or Werewolf or whatever specifically? Are there a few bands that you can throw out there, or songs even specifically that you can throw out there?
The Queen of the Dam soundtrack
Fantastic choice.
has to be that one.
Fantastic choice.
If it's not that one, then probably Sophie Ellis's "Murder on the Dance Floor," just because I'm in my Saltburn era. So,
Okay.
and then let's see, Kim Petras's was it "In the Next Life"? I think that was in that Frankenstein movie that just recently came out.
Yep. Yep. So you said you're looking into Call of Cthulhu. Are there any other systems that are on your radar, or that are on your list of ones that you'd hope to eventually learn or get into? Not just World of Darkness specific, but just in general. Any others that have crossed your path?
Aliens, that has definitely been something that I want to get into. Um, I'm still learning Cult Divinity and Twilight 2000. I want to get into the modern D20 games. I prefer more modern settings to fantasy. So anything that has to do with modern or close to modern, that's probably where I'm going to be leaning towards.
Okay. Okay. That's good. So we got some questions from our community that I'd like to go through. Uh, Jay, Hugo Boss in the chat, sent me a nice long list of questions, so I'm going to try to get through these rapid fire. What system is your favorite overall to run of all the systems? Not just World Darkness.
Hunter.
Hunter. Man, that
Yes.
is incredible to have a Hunter main. That's your game. That's your system. That's so cool. Is it primarily the humanity aspect that calls to you, or is there something else about the system that really stands out?
It's definitely the humanity, but also, the fact that you can just die for anything.
Yeah, yeah, that there isn't a supernatural backdoor that you get to get a get out of jail
Exactly.
free card. That it is a very lethal system. Uh, do you have a most memorable World of Darkness moment? Jay also asks this.
I do, yes. When I was a player, our storyteller allowed me to start my own business. And so I sent him an actual business like proposition, like a whole document. And I was like, here you go. I know it's a little excessive. But we finally got the business up and running. And one of the other players had, because again, I'm playing ministry, so I'm very, this is mine, do not ruin my moment. He ruined my moment.
Oh no.
And it turned into a fight between he and I. There was a lot of stabbing, a lot of biting. And yeah, at the end of the session, I was just crying with laughter just because of like how set I was on having this moment happen, how perfect it was going to be. And then, like any other tabletop game, it gets ruined.
But that's why we do it, isn't it? Like, it's so
Yes.
weird. If you're the A-type control freak personality, like, TTRPGs don't work unless you're a storyteller. And even then,
Yes.
you have to have the flexibility of like, well, things never go according to plan, even if I planned it out for hours, weeks, months in advance. Like, there's always, but that's why we do it. We
We
love
do.
that possibility of failure, or that randomity, that X factor, like I keep mentioning, that's going to come in and completely disrupt whatever we're working on. That's part of the fun of it. I absolutely love that. What are some of the challenges you didn't expect being a professional DM? So moving from, private home games or running free games to being a professional, what are some of the biggest challenges you've come across?
The I would say the separation of friend and client. That's
That makes sense.
honestly the difference, because I do become friends with the people that I'm playing with, but you realize at some point that it's still purely transactional. And so no matter how much I do want to be a friend to you, once we cross that boundary of now we're actually friends, then it turned into, well, since we're friends, do I still need to pay?
Right. Right, and especially if it's your full-time gig, if it's your primary source of income or anything, I mean, starting up a business, you have to be kind of ruthless.
Hmm.
You have to stick to your laurels because when you start to waver on those, it definitely makes sense that, you're going to start losing income or you're going to start running into
Yep.
issues. And like, if you set a certain amount of time for your games, you've got to keep that restriction, keep those boundaries up to be able to stay healthy about this whole thing, or else it bleeds into everything else in your life and becomes all consuming.
Yeah.
And that's got to be a really difficult part of being a professional is maintaining that stuff, because yeah, you always want to take another game or you want to like take another client into the table, but you got to remember, like, they didn't sign up necessarily for another person. They still want you at your best at 100% at your session. So if you're, yeah, that's really really tough because it is a business out of a
Hmm.
hobby. Yes, we love the hobby, and yes, we want to, some of us want to designate our entire lives to that hobby. But there are so many other factors that come in. What are some other challenges that you've faced, if any?
Um, I guess just finding people. The community, not just World of Darkness, but just tabletop in general. It's a, I shouldn't have to pay for the experience.
Right.
And, I agree with it. Like, I definitely have no issues with people who don't want to. But as I like to tell people, you can't go to a McDonald's and expect them to give you a burger for free because you want it.
Yeah, you have to learn to cook your own if you want it that way.
Exactly.
And even that's not free. You still got to
It's
do the
not free.
shopping, and
Exactly.
time is money. A lot of people forget the fact that time is still a resource that we spend and that we, exhaust and that we run out of. So, yeah, I mean, I think that it's been kind of a back and forth argument forever about like, yeah, storytellers should be paid. I do
Mhm.
honestly believe that. Even if it's just in, you guys bring the snacks, I'll tell the story, or
Exactly.
whatever the case may be. Because it's work. It's a lot of work, a lot of effort, and a lot of time goes into this. And I'm really glad that we live in an age that that's an actual viable possibility now.
Mhm.
As opposed to times before where it was just like, well, you're shit out of luck. Like
Yeah.
it's not a thing. What do you think about the market, the oversaturation of the market? Because this is something I've run into too a lot, where I see that there's just like so many tables. There's people, everyone, they see someone like you and they're like, well, I could do that. And they go to start it not knowing all of the work that goes into it, not knowing, not being as professional, and not being able to maintain that balance. What do you think about all that, and how do you counteract, or how do you deal with all of that? Because StartPlaying's a massive site. There's a lot of people, but you clearly are one of the quality ones, amidst a lot of other people who might not be up to that standard. How do you cope with all of that, or how do you work with all of that?
I ignore competition.
Okay.
I don't even view it as competition. Like, everybody wants to get paid. And if they're running something or they're able to give something to someone else that I can't, then kudos to them.
Right.
I just try to, put myself out there and just be like, hey, such and such is able to provide you this, but I can provide you this.
Right. Yeah, and obviously you're very good about communication, as I found just setting up this interview alone. You take this very very seriously, which is something I really appreciate. Another big thing that a lot of former storytellers and DMs have talked about is comparisons to the big names. You know, your Colvilles or your Matt Mercers or stuff like that. Do you ever find that being a problem? Do you ever find that, entering into your situation, or are you able to kind of block that out and just do your own thing? And if they like it, they like it. If they don't, they don't. How do you deal with that aspect of things?
Number one rule when somebody sits at my table, I am not Matt Mercer. I am not any famous tabletop person that you have seen. I don't know them. I've never seen Critical Role. I don't watch live plays or actual plays of any games because I don't want to feel inadequate in comparison to them, but also because I don't want people to come in and expect that sort of experience. Like, I am my own person. I'm going to give you the best experience I can, and I want your honest opinion on how I can improve. So not only do I improve for you, but I improve for everyone else.
I love that. I like that. And one thing that I do have to credit those individuals whose names get tossed around a lot, they aren't the ones prompting people to do it. They don't want people being like, oh, this is the way to do it. They're like, I'm just doing my own thing. Like, I'm glad you like it, but everyone's got benefits. There's things that they suck at and they admit it, and like that they acknowledge the fact that everyone, it's not bad because it's not them. You know what I
Mm-hmm.
mean? And that is something that I respect about them, and that they can openly admit that. But I do know it is an issue in the community because that was a lot of people's way in. They
Yeah.
came in through Critical Role, or they came in through Dimension 20, whatever the case may be. And so that kind of cloud is above a lot of us who are taking in these new people who have only seen the Jason Carls of the world or whatever. That can be something to contend with. But I appreciate that that's also something you address up front, and that you're very
Mm-hmm.
straight up about it, because it can be a lot to deal with. Um, do you think, as a professional, it's better to focus on one system or to branch out when being a professional DM? Have you
Oh,
had more success being really flexible with your systems, or do you find that it's better to hyper focus on one until you're confident in it before moving to another?
no. I feel like you should take in as much as you can from any system that you feel comfortable. Because if I'm going to sit here and focus heavily on World of Darkness, I'm going to burn out. I want to be able to go like, okay, I'm not just me myself. I'm not entirely familiar with werewolf. I know werewolf. I can run werewolf, but as far as like the lore goes and like the like little intricacies of things, like I'm not familiar with it, and I'm not going to waste my time trying to hyperfixate on something if I don't need to know it right now. I'd rather in the middle of the game, hey, sorry guys, I'm not familiar with this. Let me open the book real quick.
Yeah, let me look it up really quick. Yeah.
Hmm.
And that's a lot easier to do when you're not under the pressure of streaming or anything like that. That you
Yeah.
can just be like, hang on, I'm gonna look this up and not have to worry about dead air or anything like that. Absolutely. Um, yeah, I appreciated that about you as a DM too, and this is something I can't recommend highly. Like the fact that you don't put so much stress onto that stuff, because that can be very intimidating to players coming in and joining. Is people who are very like gatekeepery lore people. The fact that you're just like, we're learning the system, and the fact that it does feel like it's a learning together thing
Hmm.
sometimes is a really, really cool aspect to the way that it seems you run games, is that you are willing to admit, like, I'm not as familiar with this, so we're going to look it up together, or I'm going to go over it and I'll relate to you what I find. That is very cool, but that it's also going to be a unique experience. You're not going to run Fall of London or Chicago by Night exactly how a million other people have run it. It's going to be unique and tailored to the group, to the people, by you, to you,
Hmm.
and what you're running. That's very cool as well. We already asked which vampire clan you would be. Which vampire clan would you most likely be? So if you were to be embraced tomorrow, which clan do you think would take the greatest interest in you, knowing what you know about your life, knowing you what you know about what you do? Because Toreador is definitely on that list, much to your chagrin.
uh,
But what clan do you think would be most likely to pick you up?
Probably Ventrue.
I get that. Time management, business. Yeah,
Yes.
I could definitely see that. And also, you have to be the storyteller. You have
Yes.
to be the DM. There is a control element there for
I
sure.
I am very much a control freak. My husband says that all the time. He's like, I'm so glad that you just decided to become a DM professionally and not a player, because as a player, he's like, I can't have you at my table. You're terrible.
Oh, so that's a good question. So is your husband really into TTRPGs as well? Is it kind of a familial thing that everybody has an interest in? It sounds like the kids are growing interested in it as well, but does your husband get into TTRPGs as well?
He does, yes.
That's awesome. Okay. That's the best because I don't know how you could do this professionally without a supportive partner who is also has some interest in it. That's good to hear. Uh, what tools have you found to be the most helpful for preparing and running games? You mentioned Google Docs, but are
Mhm.
there any other tools that you draw upon or use?
No.
No. Okay.
Mm-mm. I
So
I I rely on myself and just kind of my own note taking. If if I try, like I'll look up, like studying notes, like people who are actually studying for exams and stuff, and just kind of see how they go about studying, and then I just use that as my way of absorbing information.
So you don't have any like go-to sites booked marked that you rely upon or anything. That's incredible. That is incredible because I definitely have a few sites that I'm like, okay, if I forget how this works, this is my direct go-to that I bookmark. But the fact that you rely on yourself is also very, very impressive uh, of an ability to have. That's just incredible. So as we're wrapping up here, I want to ask, what advice or tips do you have for people who would want to get into this thing? Like, if they wanted to become a professional like you, what kind of advice would you give them about getting into this whole thing?
Run a game and or system that you are entirely comfortable with. If you are unfamiliar with the system, unfamiliar with the setting, whatever, you're going to feel inadequate and you're probably going to quit while you're ahead. On top of that, try to try to accept the failures that you're going to inevitably have. When I first started, I barely had any biters. Now I'm at the point where I'm running 5 games a week, and again, building up, getting more games. So it's a learning process, and I know I have really bad self-esteem when it comes to that. If I have people leaving my games for whatever reason, I feel like, oh, they just don't like my games, they don't like me. And it could honestly just be like, oh no, I genuinely have an issue, with life and I need to leave.
Yeah, there's so many other factors that could play into why someone leaves the table. I mean, I know when we first started this server, that was a big thing for me was when I'd see people drop out, I would take it personally when in
Hmm.
reality, even if they didn't like the game, that's beyond my control. I'm not going to
Hmm.
win them back by chasing them down. But more often than not, it was they were too busy, they needed a break, they were overstimulated, whatever the case may be. Like, that's on them. That's not on me to fix anything. But
Hmm.
how do you deal with the like you said, you don't acknowledge the competition, but that's got to play a factor, especially if you are leaning into making this a full-time profession. How do you make yourself stand out, I guess, amongst everybody else? How do you make yourself stand out as a professional to be noticed and to start gathering those players?
Well, aside from leaning into the fact that I'm a girl,
That does help. I'm not gonna
it
lie,
helps
that
a
does
lot.
help.
Aside from leaning into that, I just try to see what people are running and not run that.
That's smart. That's so smart. That's so smart. Yeah, because you don't have. I mean, you do have hints of D&D, but
Hmm.
I feel like you are primarily focused on other systems and
Hmm.
other lesser known or lesser run games, which is that's got to be a good standout part. Another thing that I want to compliment you on is your branding. Like, you are very good about presenting a very professional front. Your photos look great. Your descriptions on the sites, all of them, all of your sites are very, very informative. It's very much like here's who I am, here's how I run things, like a very professional business front, which makes it seem like something worth investing in. And so big kudos and compliments on that. Like visiting your sites, visiting your social media, everything. Your branding is very uniform, but in the best way. You
Yeah.
know what I mean? Like it's uniform across the board in the best possible way. So there's no confusing that this is the same person, that this
Hmm.
is a product that they take very seriously and that they've invested into and put time into. Um, so yeah, huge compliments on that. It all looks good. Everything looks good.
Thank you.
And you also, another thing that I've found other people struggle with is you sell yourself
Hmm.
genuinely well in a good way. You do say this is what I do. This is where you can find me. You know, it's very much, and that's a hard thing for some people. People have a
Hmm.
hard time, especially when it comes to something like a hobby like TTRPGs. Just being
Yeah.
like, I am confident that this is something worth investing in. How did you figure out a pricing structure in a system? Because I know a lot of people undervalue themselves in their time. They undervalue, you know, how much they should charge or how much it's worth. How did you go about figuring that out? Was that a process for you? Did that take time? Or were you just like, this is the bare minimum I can do? We'll start there and then we'll go up as I get more. Like, how did that work for you?
So initially, I had started at around about $30 per session. And my thought process is, do I want to pay $30 to sit at somebody's table? Unless you're literally giving me, the bells and whistles and you're having food ordered to my house, and no, I'm not I'm not going to pay $30 to sit at someone's table. Um and kind of just worked my way down from there. And I realized like $20, it's enough to go out and get yourself a meal at McDonald's, and I'm like, if you can spend $20 to go get a meal at McDonald's or go to the movies and pay for yourself, you can sit down for a week,
Yeah.
and play a game.
And it's a lot more interactive than either of those things. Like
Hmm.
you're getting to be part of a community, like even if it's a small group mentality or whatever the case may be, it's very interactive. Like you'll pay more than that to go to the movies. That'll just be the concessions at the
Exactly.
movies. And you're just sitting there watching someone else's work. You know, and there's
Exactly.
benefits to that. I love going to movies. I go to movies almost every week. But it's a different experience. And yeah, I think $20 for 2 to 3 4 hours of time is totally reasonable, and I think it's worthwhile, especially to feel like you're a part of something, that you
Hmm.
have an impact on. I mean, people pay more for video games that they play once. You know what I
Exactly.
mean? Like, so I think that's very good. But there a kind of like a time of figuring that out over time? Did you have to tailor it over time as you were gaining more business or as you were struggling to find business maybe at first? How did that work?
Yeah, it was struggling, realized that, $30, I wouldn't pay that. So I was like, cut $5 off, I might. Uh my D&D game, I charge a little bit more for that just because there's a lot more that goes into D&D than there is,
100%.
storytelling games. And then I just realized like a lot of people at the end of the day, they'll reach out and they're like, hey, I can't pay 25, $30 a session. I'm willing to pay 20. And that's kind of just been like a roundabout. Everybody's been in the ballpark of $20. And I'm like, it seems, and in looking at the start playing as well, what everybody else is charging, it's roundabout the same price as
Yeah,
well. Now, of course, if you're one of the more well-known people, then obviously you're going to be charging a little bit more. But
right.
I'm starting out. I've been doing this for 2 years on Start Playing, and it seems like $20, I would say, just for anybody, especially if you're starting out, 10 to 20 bucks. That's it's not too hard in somebody else's pocket to be able to afford that.
For sure. For sure. And it sounds like with how busy you're getting, you might even be able to raise those prices soon enough because it just sounds like you're packing in so many games and that it's incredible. So I'd love to give you an opportunity now to sell our community on this, sell our community on coming to sit with you, because I've tried to as best as I possibly can, but nobody knows you better than you. So let's have your sales pitch here on getting people, because I definitely encourage people of our community to go check you out and to join some of your available tables. But tell people of the services you provide and what opportunities are available to them coming up.
All right. So again, hi, I am Disaster, a professional storyteller. I've been doing this for about 2 years, and I run everything from D&D to Pathfinder, Cyberpunk, World of Darkness games, and I am more than willing to learn any new systems that are going to be out there. Um, Currently, in my roster, I have more World of Darkness games, but am willing to open if anybody else is particularly looking for a vampire or werewolf or whatever style game. I can definitely come up with something. I have a whole list of games that I'm willing to run. Um, and I know, because I know that in D&D, what's that game? Delicious in Dungeon. That one is a very popular anime slash manga, and I have currently started running my own Feast and Foes,
See
an
that on the
Epicurean
site.
Odyssey. And yeah, that one is basically, you are in this town of Falomir and you have to try to become the master of the labyrinth. There's a once a year festival, and you have to make the best meal out of ingredients that you find in the dungeon. But of course, there's something deeper and darker in this dungeon that is going to cause the ruin of everything and everyone, and it is your job to try and stop it.
I love that. And it looks like you are looking for one more, or you need one minimum to start, but that there's 5 seats available right now at that table, if I'm reading this correctly. But that, yeah, you're ready to go on that as soon as you can get a group together. So people who are interested in D&D, that's coming up. You've also got the Lights Camera Bloodlust Hunter game that you're looking to fill some seats for as well, potentially coming up. What else?
What else? I have a werewolf game that is actually going to be starting sometime in August. That one is going to be called Blood in the Bayou. There is some very, very dark. Again, I run extremely dark content. Some really dark, murdery things, sacrificial stuff happening, and Gaia is not happy, and the land is currently dying, and of course you need to put a stop to this, or perhaps even join in and ruin the world.
Can go one of two ways. You're either for with them or against them. That's fantastic. I know we've got a lot of people in our community who are looking to play werewolf. I'm currently the only werewolf storyteller, and my hands are full. I've still got to run everything else about this community. So if you're interested in werewolf, which I know many of you are, go check out DM Disaster. Get involved in that game, because that sounds like a fantastic opportunity and very, very reasonably priced and affordable. I was stunned at how good of a deal this was. So I definitely encourage people to check that out. Also, you've got those teaching classes as well, the opportunities for people to learn the systems. Talk a little bit more about that.
Yeah, so I do offer not just World of Darkness games. It's just currently the ones that I have posted. But I do offer to learn to play. So we're going to learn what the dice mean, how to roll. We don't go into lore just because I don't want to bog people down. And then once we kind of build a character together and I teach you the basics of actually how to roll, then I have a little one shot that takes about perhaps 2 hours, and that actually allows you to play the game instead of just kind of sitting through a little seminar and you know saying goodbye for the rest of the day and not actually learning anything. Because as I said, I am a person who I like to learn through doing, and I've noticed that a lot of people are that same way as well.
Fantastic. And how long do your sessions typically run at your regular games? Not just the teaching games, but at your regular games. How long do those usually run?
Anywhere between 2 to 3 hours. Sometimes if the story is getting really good, we might go to 4 hours.
Oh, fantastic. So that's also a part of the bargain. Everyone out there watching is like, if you get a good 4 hour session, that's $5 an hour. That's not bad.
Not bad at all.
That's less than the minimum wage I started making back in 1999. So if that tells you anything, that is a huge, huge bargain that you're getting out of this. What an incredible, incredible opportunity. Well, thank you so much for taking the time to sit and talk with me. I'm so happy to see you doing so well. It's so incredible and so admirable that you are able, like, you're living the dream of so many people out there, and you're doing it so so well. And I love that you're providing teaching opportunities. I love that you're providing a variety of systems, including D&D, but outside of D&D. That's always so nice to see. So if you want to find out more about our wonderful guest, you can head over to startplaying.games/GM/rolls after dark. That's where you can find all of the Start Playing information about DM Disaster to sign up for games to get involved in those opportunities. And you can actually see her doing what she does so, so well over on Twitch at twitch.tv/rolls after dark. That's where you can see the D&D campaign, which will give you a taste of what opportunities might await you amongst those and other systems if you were to join one of those tables. I also want to take a moment to promote your social media. You can find DM Disaster on most social media, if not all social media, at DM Disaster. Right there, you see the TikTok, tiktok.com/at DM Disaster. And also, there is an Instagram page. And that is at instagram.com/DM Disaster. But mostly go check out that Start Playing and get into a game, get a seat at a table, and keep the stories rolling for our wonderful guest. Again, thank you so much for taking the time tonight. It means the world to me. I love meeting new and interesting individuals. I've been a storyteller for 30 years, and it's really, really good to see others out there in the community making this game more accessible, keeping the torch alive. There was a time in the early 2000s where we thought World of Darkness was done and no more, and to see it still around 20 years later is absolutely incredible. And I'm so glad that there are members like you amongst the community providing safe but still dark and gothic and scary opportunities for storytelling. And that's just an amazing thing that you do. And I'm so grateful for you to taking the time to be here with me tonight. Any final thoughts or words before we put a bow on this thing?
Nope.
Well, like I said, go follow DM Disaster on all social media. Go check out that Start Playing page. Go follow St. Pete by Night while you're at it. If you're new here or if you're just discovering this for the first time, all our links are listed down in the description, and you can see them down at the bottom of your screen there. And if you are interested in dabbling in World of Darkness, you can come join our community at discord.gg/St. Pete by Night. We are always offering one shots and opportunities, but if you want the real deal, go check out our guest here and get involved with that. But thank you so much, all of you, for joining us here tonight. Thank you again to our guest for joining. I'm Kent, Misha Kent on all social media, but forget about that. Go follow St. Pete by Night also on all social media. This week, we have tomorrow night, Bloody Strings, our Vampire the Masquerade Chronicle continues. Tuesday, Rage Across Tampa, our Werewolf the Apocalypse Chronicle continues. Then on Thursday, we've got Don't Get Caught, another Vampire the Masquerade Chronicle. And then Saturday, we're going to be back with another special guest here on After Dark. But thank you all so much for watching, and have a wonderful evening. Good night, everybody.